Morning, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ, and here is your latest forecast update on Tropical Cyclone Alfred, a Category 2 strength historic tropical cyclone offshore from the southeast of Queensland, where a landfall is now imminent in the next 24 hours. Alfred is moving towards the Queensland coastline, is expected to make landfall as either a Category 1 or 2 strength tropical cyclone on Moreton Island, and bringing cyclonic conditions obviously into the Brisbane metro area and then down to the Gold Coast and into the northeastern corner of New South Wales throughout the course of today. All of the details of this tropical cyclone plus more coming up in this forecast update. If you are brand new to the channel, please consider subscribing, but let's get stuck straight into things today. With Tropical Cyclone Alfred, it's just situated offshore from the Queensland coastline. It's drawing closer and closer now. It's only about 150 kilometres away from the nearest land on Stradbroke Island, and it is rotating up and developing along quite nicely this morning, which is a very scary prospect for the southeast of Queensland. It's certainly on the intensification spring once again, just with how the convection and the rainfall is now wrapping around this system here, and also some of the wind observations along the New South Wales coastline especially. You can see down towards Cape Byron, the winds now sustained at 90 kilometres an hour, so nearly at Category 2 status down there, the tropical cyclone winds, considering that this storm is officially estimated with winds of 95 kilometres an hour. I mean, it's pretty obvious that it is marginally stronger than that, considering the winds down on Cape Byron are already at 90 kilometres an hour, over 350 kilometres away from the storm centre, and only increasing as well, with peak wind gusts up to 120 kilometres an hour. Peak wind gusts now developing along the Gold Coast up to 120 kilometres an hour, supported by some of the videos and wind observations that I'm being sent through. It is looking really gnarly as well. You can see on the massive bands in this system here, especially the one that came through a couple of hours ago through the Gold Coast, which is slow moving and housing some intense rainfall, unlike pretty much anything ever seen before in this part of Queensland and New South Wales. Normally when rainfall comes through from tropical weather events, it is slower moving, and it's also not coupling with 100-kilometre-an-hour wind gusts, so the rainfall down there has been unlike anything that they've seen before in these rain bands here, with some very intense rainfall, and the one that came through last night has pushed rainfall accumulation since 9 a.m. yesterday up to about 200 millimetres, with still a couple of more hours of observations to go. So this tropical cyclone already shaping up to be substantially wetter than what the forecast was initially suggesting. Let's dive into the forecast right now and see what this tropical cyclone is expected to be going or doing. You can see that the tropical cyclone is still situated by the forecast models just offshore from Queensland. They've got a pretty good idea on what's expected to happen now by the looks of things. Yesterday we had a lot of jumping around and chopping and changing with the forecast models, but now they really have honed in on that landfall site on either North Stradbroke Island or onto Moreton Island, and I do believe right now it's going to happen on the southern tip of Moreton Island. Again, there's just a couple of discrepancies here and there, like the exact landfall location and the exact landfall timing and intensity that still need to be ironed out, but the nitty-gritty is the only thing left for this tropical cyclone to decide what it's going to be doing. The bigger picture stuffs of the cyclonic conditions, they're set in stone for southeast Queensland and northeast New South Wales. There's not really going to be much change on them depending on where this tropical cyclone makes landfall. The bigger picture is set in stone. It's just those nitty-gritty details that need to be ironed out, and that will happen throughout the course of today. You can see the EastMLBF calling for that landfall at about 6 o'clock local time tomorrow morning. I reckon it will happen slightly sooner than that. The GFS forecast model calling for that landfall on Stradbroke Island to happen at about 3 o'clock local time tomorrow morning. The Icon forecast model calling for the landfall to happen much later into Saturday afternoon, which is, again, a little bit of a bogus forecast. I don't think it's going to hang out to sea that long. And the Axis G3 forecast model, a very reliable forecast model over the last couple of days, and has done very well with Tropical Cyclone Alfred so far, calling for that landfall at about 6 o'clock in the morning on Moreton Island. So again, we've got that landfall time more or less locked in. It's going to happen sometime between midnight and about 8 o'clock tomorrow. It is still a wide range of uncertainty, but the gist is those tropical cyclone impacts are already beginning to develop, and they're not going to have a major impact, or the landfall timing is not going to have a major impact on some of these landfall conditions. So again, it's not a big deal when this tropical cyclone does cross the coast. It will be crossing the coast coinciding with high tide, and there's nothing really that is going to change about that. The tropical cyclone will be right next to the Queensland coastline along the high tide because it is slow moving, and even tonight when we get a high tide coming through, we'll already notice some storm surge beginning to develop across southeast Queensland. So again, the timing of this tropical cyclone coinciding with a high tide, even though that's normally a pretty important factor with the tropical cyclone, considering how slow moving Tropical Cyclone Alfred is and how close it's going to be towards landfall coinciding with those high tides, it really doesn't matter that much, that's for sure. This tropical cyclone, after its initial landfall on either Stradbroke or Moreton Island, will then move into the Moreton Bay area and then landfall either on Redcliffe or around the Brisbane airport sort of area. The second landfall is expected somewhere between Caboolture and Brisbane, so a very small scope of uncertainty through here, and I do imagine that the landfall is just going to go straight in towards Redcliffe or just towards the south of Redcliffe as a Category 1 strength tropical cyclone. Beyond that, into Saturday afternoon, we're going to see the tropical cyclone move up towards Kilcoy, north of Toowoomba and Gatton. I'm expecting these, and then I'm expecting this tropical cyclone to weaken off very quickly and quite dramatically. It will just fall to bits as it gets itself north of Brisbane, and all major forecast models are also suggesting that detailed right now. You you can see as it gets itself inland out towards Crow's Nest, it completely falls apart on itself and collapses, and it's basically a remnant low by early tomorrow afternoon, and just moving through Queensland in towards New South Wales. There's a messy rain-making depression out there. But yeah, forecast models really set in stone now on when this tropical cyclone is going to make landfall and whereabouts it is. We're still not 100% sure of exactly where the landfall site is going to be, but like I said, those details really don't matter. What you need to know is that those cyclone conditions are really beginning to develop now across southeast Queensland into northeast New South Wales, with destructive winds only expected from here on out for the next 24, potentially up towards the next 36 hours. Now, just honing in on that landfall forecast, there's two factors from the wind speeds here that I want to talk about. There's two separate parts of this tropical cyclone that are very important to understand. So initially before the landfall, you can see here, and I guess the radar and satellite imagery is the best way to outline this, we're seeing those cyclonic winds develop across the southeast of Queensland. They're extending up towards Brisbane right now, with wind gusts up to 95 kilometres an hour in the Brisbane metro area, and these are through the rain bands here. Now, I wouldn't necessarily call this the outer band of the tropical cyclone, because it is certainly the inner core stuff that's coming through, but on the backside of this rain band through here, any showers and storms that sweep in on the southern side of this tropical cyclone through this funnel, which will develop along the coastline, we will certainly be seeing some of the most destructive winds in this tropical cyclone, and the most destructive winds with gusts up to 155 kilometres an hour are being housed in this rain band that I'm circling right now, which you can see highlighted pretty well by this really dark mass here on the convective satellite imagery that's kind of approaching that minus 60 to minus 70 degrees Celsius in convection, a really intense thunderstorm developing there offshore from Queensland. This is where the first batch of cyclonic winds is, and where some of the strongest winds in this tropical cyclone are, which are cyclonic right down towards Yamba, so including Byron Bay, the Gold Coast, up through Stradbroke Islands, and then through Moreton Island, and even up towards the Brisbane metro area. And these tropical cyclone winds will continue to develop along the coastline and get more and more intense through tonight into early tomorrow morning as the cyclone makes landfall. And keep in mind, anywhere further south, the landfall immediately further south rather, will receive the most significant winds, which right now is looking like South Stradbroke Island down in towards the Gold Coast, with very significant wind gusts up to 155 kilometres an hour in these areas here for North Stradbroke Island, South Stradbroke Island down to the Gold Coast and extending down south towards Tweed Heads, with peak wind gusts up to 130 kilometres an hour extending down towards Byron Bay. Strong wind gusts also expected inland, but I'll get to those in a later part of this forecast update. And then as this tropical cyclone moves in towards Moreton Bay and makes its second landfall tomorrow late morning into early afternoon on Redcliffe as a Category 1 strength cyclone, we're going to see these winds whip around from the north to out towards the northeast into towards the Moreton Bay area, which means we'll get a second round of cyclonic winds into Redcliffe, the Brisbane harbour area, the Brisbane airport area, and then down towards Redland City as well. And these will extend over Moreton Island and North Stradbroke Island as well. So significant wind gusts and significant winds just in general expected throughout tomorrow afternoon, as well as Tropical Cyclone Alfred moves further inland. And of course, it goes without saying that these will be coupled with rainfall. So wind gusts up to 125 kilometres an hour possible as Alfred makes its second landfall, and these will happen in the hours after the landfall, sweeping up the Brisbane Valley and then in towards the Brisbane City area itself. The Brisbane River rather, not the Brisbane Valley. I don't know what I'm talking about, but up in towards the Brisbane City area and through Redcliffe and surrounding communities down towards Redland City and even out towards Logan City as well. Some strong winds expected into Saturday Arvo and in towards Saturday and night and towards Sunday morning as well. Leads me nicely on into the rainfall forecast, which, spoiler alert, is looking pretty dramatic across the southeast corner of Queensland. Even the major forecast models calling for some really significant rainfall accumulations, and they can't crank out the detail that some of those convective forecast models can. And the rainfall's going to stick around towards Monday as well. Why is that? Well, the tropical cyclone is going to be slow moving, and it's going to remain close enough to the coastline where it is going to be able to drag in a lot of moisture from the Coral Sea. And whilst the sea temperatures will be sapped where Tropical Cyclone Alfred is going to be headed, some of the temperatures offshore from the Sunshine Coast are still looking pretty healthy for convective development, and as such, plenty of rainfall and plenty of convection expected to stream into the southeast of Queensland over the next 4 days. So after the tropical cyclone impact, we're going to be seeing rainfall accumulations amounting to potentially up to a metre in the Gold Coast hinterland into parts of the mountains ranges along the New South Wales and Queensland border. So some really significant rainfall accumulations look to be possible as Tropical Cyclone Alfred heads further inland. Let's break those down for you hour by hour, day by day, and town by town. So you can see Tropical Cyclone Alfred really funneling that rainfall ashore right now as it sits itself just offshore, and we've had some significant accumulations overnight with, like I said, accumulations up to 200 millimetres into the northeast corner of New South Wales and up to 180 millimetres into the southeast corner of Queensland. Those accumulations will continue throughout today. They're not going to be too heavy for the most part, but still some heavy falls expected here and there. And then later on tonight, some really heavy rainfall expected to develop along the Gold Coast as this tropical cyclone approaches landfall. Intense rainfall expected later on tonight, coupled with extremely strong and damaging winds through later tonight into very early tomorrow morning for north-south at Stradbroke Island and then down towards the Gold Coast and as far south as Tweed Heads. Plenty of rainfall expected to sweep into the Gold Coast hinterland as well through tomorrow mid-morning as the tropical cyclone crosses the coast, and the rainfall being very heavy at times becomes in fact locally intense right through Saturday and into Sunday morning, and then you can see on the backside of this tropical cyclone this rain band that's going to sweep down the Sunshine Coast begin to develop. So some good falls expected along the Sunshine Coast as well, anywhere between 100 to 300 millimeters expected tomorrow afternoon, and then this rainfall sweeping right into the Brisbane city area, right through the Gold Coast hinterland and into the wards of the mountains adjacent to the New South Wales Queensland border. Plenty of rainfall to be talking about there as well, with some rainfall rates that could be approaching 75 millimeters an hour, sustained for multiple hours at a time, and this is where we're going to be seeing rainfall accumulations through Saturday approaching 6, potentially up towards 700 millimeters into parts of the Gold Coast hinterland. Some huge rainfall accumulations possible in the backside of Tropical Cyclone Alfred from that moisture band that's going to be dragged in from the north. That rainfall won't ease off until Sunday afternoon, where there's still a couple of showers here and there and thunderstorms lingering around the southeast corner of Queensland, showers continuing through Monday and in towards Tuesday as well, but the rainfall will clear out by about the 11th of March by the looks of things. But yeah, Tropical Cyclone Alfred, it's going to be a wet one, that's for sure. So let's talk on those rainfall accumulations right now, and obviously I think it goes without saying that the eastern wave is certainly lowballing on some of these numbers here. We are talking about a subtropical environment here, so obviously rainfall accumulations are going to be substantially higher than what the eastern wave forecast is suggesting. Other forecast models are saying around the same numbers as well, but I'm trying to find one that kind of paints the most accurate picture, and I think right now it's going to be the Axis G3 minus some of the rainfall up in the north. So I'm going to give what the forecast is suggesting and my 2 cents worth on this rainfall forecast as well. So starting in the north and heading south, those along the Sunshine Coast, anywhere between 100 up towards 300 millimeters possible through Saturday arvo and into Sunday morning. Plenty of rainfall expected there along the coastline and especially into the mountainous areas adjacent to the coastline, and it will be coming through thick and fast. So again, make sure you are prepared for flash flooding up there. And the storm certainly isn't going to feel like nothing up around the Maroochydore area. There is going to be the chances of flash flooding and some locally destructive wind gusts as well from Tropical Cyclone Alfred. So I'm glad that everybody is heeding the cyclone warnings up there. There's a lot of people saying that the Sunshine Coast is going to miss it, and they will miss it in comparison to the Gold Coast, but it is still going to get quite gnarly up there. Bribie Island can expect up to about 300 millimeters through the duration of Tropical Cyclone Alfred. Caboolture as well up to about 350 millimeters, and then the real rainfall starts further south. Brisbane can expect a further 400 millimeters, potentially a little bit more as well, and we're really up on the rainfall forecast of Brisbane because of the rainfall that's going to come through on the backside of slow-moving Tropical Cyclone Alfred through Saturday arvo and into Sunday morning. Big accumulations out towards Ipswich and Lowood and into some of the mountains out towards Esk and Catton as well. Some good rainfall accumulations that could approach 550 millimeters through there are expected. Out towards Logan City, rainfall accumulations up to 400 millimeters expected, with about 200 millimeters coming through in the next 36 hours from Tropical Cyclone Alfred. So plenty more rainfall expected on the backside of this system. Through Moreton Island and North and South Stradbroke Island, rainfall accumulations up to about 400 millimeters possible as a result of Tropical Cyclone Alfred's landfall. Slightly more rainfall can be expected down in towards the Gold Coast, down towards the Coomera area as well, with rainfall accumulations between the Logan City right down towards Tweed Heads, including the Gold Coast, Coomera, Nerang, and Sanctuary Cove. Rainfall accumulations up there could be anywhere up to about 800 millimeters of rainfall or so along the hinterland, and then about 500 millimeters along the coastline, with plenty of very heavy rainfall expected to come through tomorrow. Now, more heavy rainfall around the Tweed Heads area, like I said, up to about 800 millimeters in the mountains and about 400 millimeters along the coastline. Out towards Murray-Willumbah, rainfall accumulations up to 800 millimeters, with spot accumulations over the next 4 days up to 1,000 millimeters being possible there. The most heaviest falls will be in the northeastern corner of New South Wales by the looks of things, with another patch of very heavy falls out towards Boonah and into the Springbrook National Park as this tropical cyclone's backside with all that moisture comes through as well. Down towards Byron Bay, rainfall accumulations up to 300 millimeters possible throughout the remainder of Tropical Cyclone Alfred's crossing. Rainfall accumulations between 2 and 300 millimeters along the coastline down towards Yamba, with rainfall accumulations between 3 and 500 millimeters in the mountains adjacent to the coastline. Rainfall accumulations between 100 and 500 millimeters expected in the mountainous areas outside of Coffs Harbour, with rainfall accumulations being very high at Dorrigo as well, which have been excessive the other night, with rainfall accumulations up to about 300 millimeters. Very heavy falls expected about as far south as the Barrington Tops, Port Macquarie and Kempsey as well. The rainfall accumulations will drop off as you get down further south of about Port Macquarie, so again the Barrington Tops are not expecting too much in the way of significant rainfall. And some good falls also expected into the Northern Rivers part of New South Wales as well, out towards Moree, Narrabri, Lightning Ridge and Woolgett. It's been a while since we talked about our friends over there, and you can see significant falls also expected there in the next 4 days as Tropical Cyclone Alfred moves further inland through Sunday and in towards Monday. The heavy rainfall won't ease off from this tropical cyclone until, by the looks of things, at least Tuesday or Wednesday, when the remnant energy will be dispersed across interior parts of New South Wales. So some heavy falls still expected in those areas, and you can see week-long rainfall accumulations actually out there really start to push up into the high 200s and even out towards the early 300s in some of these locations of some much-needed rainfall. So looking very good indeed. And I think it goes without saying as well that these locations are expecting some dramatic flooding as a result. You're under flood warnings across much of northeastern New South Wales and all of southeastern Queensland, expecting major flooding over the next 24 hours as a result of Tropical Cyclone Alfred's landfall passage. And I need to stress this, the fact that this rainfall is being really heavy, and it's unlike anything seen before across parts of southeast Queensland. I mean, we're looking at rainfall rates here approaching the 20 to 30 millimetre mark an hour, and I mean, this radar imagery isn't really doing some of these storms justice here, but some really excessive rainfall accumulations are expected. So as such, some significant falls can be expected, and some really significant flooding can be expected across the southeast of Queensland. So expect moderate to major riverine flooding in your area, and flash flooding to be widespread through the next 24 to 48 hours as well. Some really significant rainfall accumulations will give way to that. And another interesting impact from this tropical cyclone is of course going to be the seas and the storm surge. Already those wave heights getting absolutely massive across parts of southeast Queensland and northeast New South Wales. I'll see if we can pull up some webcam video footage right now, because there are some huge waves along the coastline, and those webcams can give us a pretty good idea of what is really expected in terms of the massive wave heights. We've got the Tweet Heads webcam here. I think that might be out of action, but you can, oh no, it isn't. You can just see how big some of these waves are here throughout the sunrise hours, and just how gnarly some of these cyclone conditions look. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it on the video footage here, but you can see the wave heights are just absolutely massive, and it's just grey conditions with the amount of rainfall that's falling in these areas. So again, these waves are really starting to become a problem now across northeast New South Wales and southeast Queensland. Here's another one at Ballina, the airport here. It's completely grey there, so the conditions are really rapidly deteriorating, and these waves are absolutely massive as a result. And storm surge will cause some really significant impacts from this tropical cyclone. Now, I had a couple of people in the comments say that wave dam sounds like fear-mongering. Well, it's not a phenomenon that's often seen from tropical cyclones, but because we've got so much water here that's protected by these islands across the Gold Coast, it's kind of going to work against the Gold Coast here in terms of their flood mitigation strategies, because you can see for the Nerang River, the Coomera River as well, there's really only two drainage points here for these rivers to exit, and that's where the Gold Coast Seaway is, which is a very narrow channel, and very strong currents there on a normal day. So imagine what they're going to be throughout the course of Tropical Cyclone Alfred. And then up here between South and North Stradbroke Island, there's another channel here north of South Stradbroke Island, and between South Stradbroke Island up towards North Stradbroke Island, there's another channel there. And as a result, that's the only two locations that water can exit from, especially the Nerang River and the Coomera River. I mean, it does have a chance to exit up into the Moreton Bay area, but the storm tides are really pushing the water back down into the Gold Coast Canal system, which means that the storm surge, once it comes in, it's not going to allow the water to exit, because it's going to be blocking up these places here, effectively speaking. Like, obviously water will be able to flow in trickles here and there, but it's going to be the amount of water heading in is just going to be the amount of water heading out, and that's like pushing a hand against your other hand as well. I mean, you can't push your hand through your hand, so that's kind of the best way to describe it here. There's going to be a bit of a wave dam developing, and that's going to exacerbate the storm surge and the flooding impacts across the Gold Coast, and that's why we're expecting such a significant storm tide from what's effectively a pretty weak tropical cyclone. That's another thing as well, people saying that this is just a Category 2 strength system. Relatively speaking, this would be like a Category 4 strength cyclone going up towards Cairns. This is a very, very dangerous tropical cyclone, and I feel like that's being taken out of perspective just because of its rating that it's been given. Tropical cyclones are not fair, and they are not even. They will impact areas differently depending on their size and the amount of rainfall that they're carrying, so again, keep that in mind. And this tropical cyclone here, with it being a Category 2 in an area that is not built for, let alone a Category 1 strength tropical cyclone, is going to cause some really significant problems and some significant damage, and that is more or less a guaranteed at this time. Make sure you are hunkering down across the Gold Coast. It is quite clearly way too late to be beginning preparations for this tropical cyclone. Just make sure you are ready. It is also too late to evacuate right now. It'd be way too dangerous to be on the road. So today it is a stay inside day and watch this tropical cyclone as it comes through. Keep up to date with the latest information as well. Make sure you're tuning into updates from different weather agencies every single hour. You want to be as up to date as possible through a tropical cyclone like this, and it is imperative that you stay inside and stay safe. There are a lot of people out there that are becoming avid storm chasers from this tropical cyclone, and they are doing it at their own risk, and I strongly advise against stuff like that. If you are trying to get footage of this tropical cyclone for different weather agencies or for yourself, make sure you are doing it from the confines of your own home. Stay away from windows, stay away from doors, and make sure you are in a very secure part of your house, an interior living room or an interior bathroom. It is imperative that you stay safe from the floodwaters, from the winds, and from the tropical cyclone's wrath. This is a very significant tropical cyclone threat, and it is going to be a history-making system for southeast Queensland. There's going to be two further updates today on the CyclonesOZ channel, plus a landfall update, which I'm dreading if it's going to make landfall at 4 o'clock. That's going to be about 1 or 2 o'clock my time, so again, I'm absolutely dreading that. But I will be making the updates in this tropical cyclone as it happens, so again, make sure you are subscribed and staying ready for this channel. There's going to be plenty more information to come on Tropical Cyclone Alfred, but that is all from me this morning. A special shout out to the channel sponsors. The names are on screen right now as well, and if you want to help out, then click the join button down below and select the channel sponsor status. It is much appreciated, and all the support everyone has been very helpful lately. Anyways, that is all from me today, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Stay safe. Goodbye.